Look around you. It is true that we won't fully understand the significance of something until we are able to do it. Inhale deeply and exhale slowly. If you can breathe on your own, it is a good reason to be grateful and inspired to fulfill your dreams and aspirations, because someone out there might be having difficulty doing that. Today, I will tell you the story of Paul Alexander, who was forced to stay inside the iron cylinder for him to be able to breathe. You'll also be aware of what an iron cylinder is and how Paul got inside of it. Are you ready? Then let's get this started. Paul Alexander was the only patient who remained in the ward for more than 18 months. His body, from neck to foot, was enclosed in a metal cylinder. There were hundreds of other confined children who were screaming in agony but are unable to speak in the large, noisy ward he was in. He couldn't do anything to help them. He could only watch how each time a child passed away, another child would replace them in that cylinder. They could go home if they were able to recover. Paul, however, was unable to leave the cylinder. Even the nurses anticipated that he would pass away in the coming hours. But Paul has ambitions. He wanted to become a lawyer, and the only way for him to fulfill his dream of becoming a lawyer is to get out of that cylinder. But the question is, how did Paul end up inside that cylinder in the first place? Before Paul was put into the iron cylinder, he was just a typical 6-year-old living in Dallas. The worst polio outbreak in American history occurred in 1952. There were about 60,000 cases, more than 3,000 of which were deadly, and more than 20,000 of which led to some sort of incapacity. Along with hundreds of other young people, Paul was one of those who acquired the paralytic poliomyelitis virus in the summer of that same year. Swimming pools, cafes, and bowling alleys were shut down as a result. The insecticide DDT was sprayed on the streets to prevent the virus from spreading. No one was permitted to attend school. Nobody made phone calls because they thought the virus might spread via cables. They refrained from speaking to their friends and neighbors out of fear of contracting the virus. 3 years would pass before a vaccine became accessible. Nobody at the time was aware that polio may only enter a child's body through the mouth mucous membrane. Paul was also ignorant of that. In the sweltering heat of that summer, he only wanted to chill under the anticipated rain. However, he felt a severe headache and neck pain. He returned home and stayed in bed for 5 days before experiencing more serious symptoms, such as losing the ability to breathe, walk, or swallow. The virus had already spread into his central nervous system, which caused his respiratory muscles' vital cells to die. These cells are crucial for muscular function and strength. When he couldn't breathe on his own, that's when the cylinder came in, which is called the iron lung. The iron lung is a technology that uses negative pressure to assist the patient in breathing. It works by drawing air into the patient's lungs whenever the bellows push air into the cylinder. The patient's lungs are pushed to exhale air as the pressure changes, but they can't use it forever. Only recovery or death will allow you to leave this machine. But the interesting thing about Paul's story is that he managed to escape the cylinder, but was neither dead nor recovered. Paul's lungs and the rest of his body were paralyzed. However, he couldn't stay in the hospital as long as he wanted. He must return home eventually. However, given his reliance on the iron lung, how could he? His parents decided to bring the machine into their house. They find it difficult whenever there is a power outage because they have to manually pump the machine, frequently seeking assistance from neighbors. Paul would try to hold his breath whenever he needed to take a bath. Most of the time, he can't hold his breath for too long, and he would fall unconscious. While Paul disliked doctors, he felt at ease around Mrs. Sullivan, a therapist. She was the one who introduced Paul to the alternate breathing technique known as glossopharyngeal breathing, sometimes known as frog breathing, which involves purposefully squeezing air into the mouth and throat cavity and forcing it downward with the use of the tongue. His sole opportunity to avoid relying on the cylinder was through this technique. Paul had to learn frog breathing in order to be able to breathe independently, especially since he wanted to go to school and become a lawyer. Mrs. Sullivan negotiated with Paul. She would give him a puppy if he could breathe for 3 minutes without the iron lung, but simply through the frog breathing technique. Paul agreed to take on the challenge. He had no idea that it was also his means of mastering the technique. Would Paul succeed? Before we continue, I just want to remind you that if you've made it this far into the video, you're clearly enjoying it. Give it a like, subscribe so you don't miss anything, and let us know what you think in the comments section. In the meantime, Paul's mother looked for a chance for her son to complete his education even at home, even though for the 1950s it was quite uncommon. For Paul to be able to write and turn book pages, his father invented a T-shaped device. Paul received a grade of A when he graduated from high school in 1967. He only received one D, and it was in biology class for his inability to dissect a rat. Paul got Ginger, his dog, on his graduation. That simply implies that he succeeded in Mrs. Sullivan's challenge of frog breathing. As a result, he was finally able to escape the cylinder and even move around the yard. Paul made the decision to go after his goal of becoming a lawyer. He wanted to travel and perhaps even fall in love. However, it is not so simple, especially since Paul would not be accepted by any law school worldwide. His inability, not his academic performance, is the issue. For people with physical disabilities like Paul back then, there simply weren't any facilities. Paul, though, would go through any lengths to study law. For 2 years, he kept calling the dean until he got a response he was looking for. Paul had to fulfill 2 requirements in order to enroll in the school. First, he needed someone to help him attend his classes, and second, he needed to receive the polio vaccine. Due to the fact that polio had not yet been totally eradicated, mass vaccination was required. The disease frightened Americans just as much as they feared the Soviet hydrogen bomb. Paul has fulfilled the requirements and finally became a law student. Paul continued to go on the iron lung every night, but he was still happy. He can go to theaters and clubs during the day. He could also go to the sea. The best part is that he fell in love with a woman named Claire, and they decided to get married. But Claire's mother called off the wedding. Claire's mother didn't want her daughter to marry Paul, who she described as a grown-up man with a body that is similar to an 8-year-old child. Even though Paul was used to doing everything to achieve what he wanted, he chose to let go of Claire this time. He didn't want to make Claire's life more difficult. Paul then made the decision to leave Dallas. He changed schools and enrolled at the University of Texas at Austin. Paul hired a caregiver who could help him and brought his iron lung to the campus. But for some strange reason, the caregiver didn't arrive at the campus. Because of this, Paul was cared for by university staff members until he found another caregiver. Paul was still reliant on the machine even though he can breathe on his own for a few hours. He continued to use the iron lung, but all of his efforts paid off when he finally earned his degree, appeared in court one day dressed in a suit, and won his case. Yes, Paul was able to achieve his dream. Paul was able to work and live freely. However, the iron lung malfunctioned one day. The primary cause of the machine malfunction was an air leak brought on by cylinder seals that were already damaged. Paul couldn't replace it with any of the advanced technology since only the iron lung produces negative pressure. Paul's lungs have deteriorated, therefore the positive pressure found in all modern equipment won't help. What do you think Paul will do this time? He does utilize YouTube. In a video message, he discussed his damaged iron lung. He was fortunate to find a mechanic who agreed to manually create the required components. This is because no components were available because the machine has been out of production for a long time. At present, Paul is 74 years old. Even though he still depends on the iron lung and will for the rest of his life, his sacrifices and effort were known to the world. He is a genuine hero who serves as an inspiration for all those who struggle. He even wrote the book, 3 Minutes for a Dog, which served as an inspiration to countless others throughout the globe. And in doing so, he will never be forgotten. What do you think about this? Are you also inspired by Paul's story? Let us know in the comments section. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Please click the bell icon so you'll be notified when new videos are posted. And as always, thanks for watching Ponder This.